Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Oh, Chad, I'm excited.
Bob, I'm nervous. I'm actually a little nervous. Folks, we're doing an interview today, and we're doing it a little differently than normal. Because normally, Bob and I just video in with someone, and we'll interview them. Yet, this guest happened to be in the area, and we were able to make it. And he's actually sitting in the room. I can't even look at him right now because as we were doing our research, I think you and I both basically said the same thing. And as I read to you a little bit about this guy, your response was?
I'll just be blunt. I'll tell you exactly what I said, which was, wow, I'm a real piece of shit. John, your resume is really impressive.
Absolutely. And we're going to jump right to it here. Before we even introduce you sitting here in the room with us, we want to shout out to John Hurlbert, one of our regular listeners, because he's the one who helped make this interview happen today. And I think this might go down in one of my top 10 episodes of all the episodes, just the conversation we've had before we even started recording. We want to welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, Navy officer, Commander John P Hiltz. John, welcome to the Win, Make, Give recording studio.
Great to be in studio with you. I'm a fan of the show. I really enjoy the premise of Win, Make, Give, and it is a pleasure to be with you both. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we talk about health, wealth, leadership, legacy. You hit on all of them. And we'll be covering that as we go through this. John, the way we like to start these, as you know from listening to some of our episodes, we want you to introduce yourself. We don't want to tell everybody who you are, what you do, because we want you to mention what matters
Chad,
in the order.
The cat's out of the bag, by the way. They call that the lazy man's podcast approach, John.
Yeah. I heard Jimmy want to say that too. We've done our research.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'm just
Jimmy
kidding.
Mackin, just so you know, Bob and I have done and always do our research, but we like to hear it from you.
Sure.
So Commander, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I think I was invited here because I'm a career Navy F-18 pilot, and I'm currently headquartered here in Seattle, Washington, as the commanding officer for Navy recruiting efforts in the Pacific Northwest. But spent a career flying the F-18 for the Navy, including a tour from 2012 to 2014 with the United States Navy Blue Angels as their number 2 pilot and right wing. But really, I'm a kid that grew up in northern Kentucky. I was lucky to go to school at the University of Notre Dame on a Navy ROTC scholarship, and I decided after that I wanted to live my life's adventure as a Navy fighter pilot, and I was fortunate to be able to do that. And I've literally been around the world doing it, and that's really what brought me here today with you.
That's awesome. So, Bob, we were talking about before we even get into the Navy thing, right? Notre Dame,
Right?
okay. And you played basketball. So, I mean, we're going to lose Bob now to the whole conversation because everyone knows it's his thing.
Let's talk basketball. My first, you're a tall dude. How tall are you?
6'5".
6'5". I don't know where I learned this along the way, mistakenly, by the way.
Yes.
I thought that tall people couldn't be fighter pilots.
Yeah, it's pretty atypical. I think it was, my height served me well on the basketball court. I don't know that it did anything for me in the cockpit, but I went to flight school in Pensacola, Florida after I graduated from Notre Dame. And the first thing they do is they give you a full physical and they take all these measurements. And I was half expecting them to say, no, you're ineligible from flying fighter jets.
You have the same understanding.
Sure. Just because
right?
I do. I know that I'm not a typical build for a pilot. But once they took the measurements, they said I wasn't restricted from anything. And I certainly wasn't going to ask any questions or have them remeasure. I walked out the door and my adventure began.
That's amazing. Now, your adventure began, and we're going to go through your adventure. There are some highlights in it, yet I want to just hit this summary in your bio. You've flown over 3,300 flight hours.
Right.
Okay, you've logged more than 471 carrier-assisted landings.
Yep.
That's on the aircraft carrier where the rope grabs you and really pulls you to a quick stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that hurt as much as it looks?
It doesn't hurt. It certainly gets your attention. You go from basically 150 to 160 miles an hour to zero in the length of a football field. So everything in your world is going forward. But you sort of are prepared from the catapult shot that you took to get flying
to a
from
0 to 150.
So it's the same. It's the same mechanics, and you understand that it is a feat of engineering to make it happen.
So we do not recommend this, yet if you want to experience this, go get your car on an open road up to 150 and just hit those brakes really hard and see what happens.
That's about right.
The only thing I know about aircraft carriers is I worked on cruise ships younger.
Oh, nice.
And I remember being in port where there was an aircraft carrier, and all we could say is we were bigger than you were, and all they said was, "We can blow you up." So that's my introduction to aircraft carriers. Now, you've been awarded. I'm going to brag on you because I know you won't. One Defense
Sure.
Meritorious Service
People
medals,
ask me
so
about the
all
medals
these
and
medals.
ribbons on my uniform all the time, and I like to joke that one of them is for perfect attendance, one is for a spelling bee champion. Certainly, I've earned some level of awards in my military career, but lots of them you get as a reward at the end of a tour, as an example. So I take much more pride in the service that I've done than in the awards that I've received. So I don't know that we need to go over all those things. I'm proud to wear the uniform, and I'm proud to wear the medals and ribbons, but that's not why most people sign up to do this job.
That's the seat for the humble person in the room.
It is.
Because that's Ben's seat, right? So that's the humble seat. Now, when you joined, how old were you when you first joined the Navy?
Yeah, it was 1998 is when I applied for and then received that ROTC scholarship.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I would say when I really joined or said, hey, this is something, serving my country is something that I'm interested in. So I was, conducting training while I was at the University of Notre Dame, and then September 11th, 2001 happened during my senior year. So that certainly changed what I thought the nature of my service would be. I don't want to say that we were, fully in a peacetime footing at that point, but I think everyone recognized that the world had turned on that day, and that I knew that the trajectory of my naval career would be vastly different than it was for the first 3 years of my training at Notre Dame. So then I commissioned at the end of that school year in the spring of 2002, and kind of off I went to flight school training.
So it's been 20 years.
Yeah, I'm at 19 and a half years now, and this tour that I'm in now as the commanding officer could take me to retirement. I don't know that I'm particularly interested in taking the uniform off for the last time yet, but I've got, for the first time in 20 years, I've got some real options and some considerations to have. I've got a wife and a daughter and another one on the way in 2 weeks here. So
congratulations!
So excited about that and excited about what the future holds. But I've had such a fun, challenging, and adventurous career. I don't know that I'm interested in stopping it right now.
Can we go back to like your
You're asking
upbringing?
Basketball again.
No.
aren't you?
We're going to go before the Notre Dame basketball appearance, which I'd love to hear your story about your first shot out there.
Oh boy, I don't know that I want to read that.
But you, two of your brothers have also served in the military. Your dad, and I don't know if he still does this, but yearly was making trips back to Jamaica in service. Yeah. Like, where does that servant heart come from? In your was that your parents or?
I think it was instilled in both of my father and mother's side of their family. My mom was an emergency room nurse. Her dad was a community physician in northern Kentucky. My grandfather was an officer in World War II. And my dad just sort of instilled in us that to whom much is given, much is expected in return. And that kind of service mindset, I think, perpetuated through. But, I think I don't want to say that it was all this altruistic nature. There was a contractual thing too. I chose to do Navy ROTC because it was a way for me to pay to go to the university that I was essentially conceived to go to.
Wait, why did you? Was your
My dad?
I read that your dad used to sing the alma mater to you when you were a little kid. Why? Like he was just a big Rudy fan?
He got his master's and PhD from the University of Notre Dame, and I grew up, and my whole family grew up very passionate Notre Dame fans. And when that letter of acceptance came, saying that I was accepted there, I knew that's where I needed to go.
Oh, you had some fun years as a kid watching Notre Dame football.
It was,
didn't you?
1988. That was a long time ago now, but it was a dream come true for me. And then to be able to walk onto the basketball team only was the icing on the cake for me.
Can I just tell you, I'm a year older than you, and I was a big USC fan back in those days.
Yeah.
And so Tony Rice and Rodney Peete, and they played in that
game.
Great games. So you were on one side of that just celebrating and high-fiving your brothers, and I was on the other side crying with one of my brothers laughing at me. And
that's the nature of sports and rivalries, isn't it?
All right, so there you go. Now, when you got into all of this, meaning the Navy, was it going to be a life plan?
No.
Or was this just I'm in, did my tour, my few years, and I'm out?
Yeah, the nature of flight training is that it's kind of expensive and the duration is pretty long. So it took me about 2.5 years to earn my wings of gold, which kind of signifies the end of your initial training as a naval aviator. You owe 8 years of service after that because the Navy's basically made what amounts to a graduate education investment in you.
Got it.
So I knew it was going to be, essentially 9 or 10 years, but I never thought of it. And I had people ask me that all the time, like, aren't you nervous about the commitment? And it doesn't make sense to me. If you're passionate about what you're doing, why are you worried about the time that you're spending doing it? You just don't.
So say that again. Say that again, because I don't care what you do out there. You need to hear that
right.
message
If you're passionate about what you're doing,
Yep.
why would you ever be concerned about the time commitment that it takes to do it? It just doesn't make sense to me. And so I was excited to do it, and I never thought that it was sort of burdensome to do. But I don't know that I went into it saying I'm going to do a 20-year career. I'm glad that I have, and I've really enjoyed the nature of serving my country in the Navy. But I didn't go into it with that mindset. I just said, hey, this is an adventure, and let's see where it leads.
And where has it led? So tell us some of the places you've been stationed over the time.
Yeah, the flight training pipeline took me started in Pensacola, then Corpus Christi, Texas, with about a 2-month stint in Las Cruces, New Mexico. When the weather gets bad in the Texas coast, they go to the New Mexico desert to learn how to fly for a few months, and did a lot of flying there. Then I went to Meridian, Mississippi, and learned how to fly jets there for about 2 years. And then most of my operational time has been in Lemoore, California, which is the Central Valley of California. So basically, if you went halfway up California and halfway in, that's where Lemoore is, in the middle of the agricultural mecca of America. And that's where I did my first 2 deployments. After that, I went down to Miramar, California, San Diego with the Marine F-18 Training Squadron.
I'm assuming being in San
there.
Diego is better than being in central nowhere, California.
I see it that
Better
way.
than
I don't know
anywhere.
that everyone would see it that way. I'll put it this way. Real estate prices would say so. But I really enjoyed San Diego a whole lot. And while I was there, I had a friend who had been selected for the Blue Angels, and he just kind of put it in my mind that, hey, have you thought about applying? And I love to tell that story only because it illustrates the power of inception, or the power of expectations, where you can say to somebody, hey, I believe in you. I believe you could do this. Do you believe in that you could? And sometimes that's all it takes. And that's really all it took for me. And I thank him to this day for saying, like, hey, you can do this.
We were talking about it before that we started, that you hadn't really even considered it, right? Like, it was...
Right.
You hadn't really considered it. And him just telling you now you considered it, and you were like, actually, you know what? I could do this.
It really worked out. I mean, the timing worked out well. I was at a window in my career where I could apply to be a Blue Angels. It's really an application process. And, threw my name in the hat. I was not selected the first time I applied, though. So, another story for perseverance, was selected as a finalist and flew down to Pensacola for an interview, but didn't go as well as it needed to go, and I was not selected. But they said, hey, we enjoyed being with you. Maybe think about this for next year. And it worked out on the second time I applied, and was selected in the fall 2011.
I mean, how many, I'm assuming when you become a Blue Angel, you do it for a while. Like, there's one opening a year? Or?
There's 2 or 3 openings a year, basically. I mean, there's 6 pilots that do all the flying. So there's no backups. I mean, the flying is a very learned and perishable skill. And so you do it for 2 or 3 years. There's 6 pilots in the show, and then the number 7 pilot is the narrator and advanced pilot, and he does sort of the media and VIP rides. And you do 2 years. You spend a year learning how to do it. Then you spend your next year teaching the new guy how to do it, and then it's back to the Navy. I mean, the Blue Angels isn't a career-long job. It's not supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to showcase the Navy all around the country. But at the core of what any pilot on the Blue Angels is a carrier-based Naval or Marine Corps aviator, and that's what happens at the end. And
you had said that the 75th anniversary of the Blue Angels,
right? Yeah.
And you did the math and said it's probably somewhere in the area of how many pilots?
I think 285, 290 pilots at this point, something like that. I could be off.
And I was thinking about saying to Bob, I mean, do quick math on number of football teams there are and years in football or whatever. That's less than probably the number of professional NFL quarterbacks.
Way less. Like, it's a much more exclusive
right?
group.
That's that exclusive. When you think about the quarterbacks of the NFL, that's exclusivity. Now you're talking a Blue Angel pilot. I mean, you're even more exclusive than that.
Well, I feel really fortunate that I was able to do that. I will tell you that there are plenty of other F-18 pilots that would be perfectly capable of flying a season with the Blue Angels. I'm glad that I was selected to do so, and I've enjoyed a whole bunch of blessings in my life because of that selection. But I take a lot of pride in being a part of that that legacy. And it's a great thing to be able to reach back to the current team and talk to them about the emotions and struggles and successes that they're enjoying now. And it's a fun legacy to be a part of, and I'll be proud of it the rest of my life. In fact, the motto of the team is once a Blue Angel, always the Blue Angel. So it's great to be a part of it.
I want to ask about grit for a second. Like I read your bio and I've read some different articles about you.
Because we did research, Jimmy. We didn't just ask the lazy man question.
I see this like consistent theme of grit, really. Like you didn't have enough talent to be a Division I scholarship recruit, so you walked on the team. True. You even had in your freshman year of college like a heart issue where you had to go get surgery for a heart issue. When you started flying, you would get sick.
Oh yeah, and if you wanted my favorite sort of story about grit would probably be that one.
Let's talk about that one. Like you know, most people we think the pilots, they get up there, they're naturally born to be in an airplane, they take off, and here we go,
I just wasn't. Unlike many people, I had no flight experience when I started my Navy flight training. So my first flight, I go up in a T-34, which is a pretty advanced turbo propeller driven engine, fully aerobatic. And it's a great training airplane because it's pretty stable. So I went up and my instructor was in the back seat.
Never been in a crop duster out there in Kentucky.
I'd never flown in anything other than a commercial jet. So the instructor says, well, what do you want to do first? And I think I was pretty amped up. This is what I want to do. This is my adventure. And I said, hey, how about we do a loop? So we did a loop. He said, what do you want to do next? And I said, how about we do a roll? We did a roll. And he said, what do you want to do next? And I said, I want to throw up. and I did. And I threw up on, I think, my first 9 flights, something, a pretty exorbitant amount. And the Navy doesn't have much use for pilots that can't stop getting sick. So I knew, and I was really concerned. And I went and I read every book about air sickness. I saw a sports psychologist, a hypnotist. I tried, the ginger pills. I tried the wristbands, the ear patches, and not many things worked.
Bananas?
Right? Yeah, so somebody says that to me and says, have you thought about bananas? And I said, no, I haven't heard anything about bananas preventing air sickness. They said, well, they won't prevent air sickness, but they'll taste like bananas on the way back up. And they sure did. But that was helpful. But, I remember, though, on my 9th flight, I came home sick again and really frustrated. My roommate was a Naval Academy grad, a Top Gun graduate, a guy named Nate Lyon. And I give him credit this day for sort of saving my career because I came home and I threw my helmet bag across our apartment, and he could see that I was pretty upset, and that's not typical. And he said, oh, wait, what are we doing here? And I told him what happened, and he said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop everything, and we're going to start to control the things that we can control. We're not going to be able to control if you get airsick on your next flight, but we can control the briefing items in the pre-flight with your instructor. We can control all the systems knowledge that you need to have about the plane's control system or fuel system or engine system. We can control all the procedural radio calls that you're going to make going to and from the working area where you're going to fly. We're going to take away all of those variables and make sure that you know those things forward and backward. So when you are in the plane, you can relax and you're not going to have to worry or waste one brain cell about those things that you can control. And we did that, and it really helped me calm down and made me a better pilot and better person for doing it. So I owe my career to Nate, and I tell him that all the time. But that grit mindset of, hey, I need to overcome this or else I'm out of a job. This adventure is over before it starts. That was a real feeling that I had, and I'm proud that I was able to kind of overcome that. But I did it with a lot of help too. I don't want to say that it was just my own internal grit. I think you have to recognize the power of your friends, of a network, and of people that can help you out. And I was lucky to have great instructors and great friends and people that tried to keep me going in the right direction.
So many great lessons in there, right? I mean, forget just the grit lesson you
Focus
started
on
with.
You can control.
What you can control, who are you surrounding yourself with, the people that you have, the influences in your world right there. I mean, you're hitting on all of our favorite points.
I think that's what grit kind of comes down to. I mean, I could have been really upset, and I was upset, but I could have dwelt on the negative, like, why is this happening to me? But I think the gritty thing to do is to get back to work and fix the stuff that you can fix and have an influence on, and not get worried about all the stuff that is just the noise around you.
That's awesome. All right, John, I want to go back to something you mentioned, and in your bio, you mentioned Lyons here was a Top Gun pilot.
He was, yeah.
You mentioned Miramar earlier where you were. So, of course, you were an instructor there. You were an instructor at Top Gun, right? Just like in the movie?
Negative. I wish. That's the Top Gun program is the best training that you can receive if you're a tactical aviator. It's an incredible program. I'm proud to know guys and have flown with guys that went through that. When it came time for me to decide which direction I want to go, I went in a direction that kind of led me to being able to fly with the Blue Angels. Other guys go in the Top Gun direction. But I will tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here without that movie having been made. I was 7 when it came out, and it was certainly a seminal moment in my life, and I'm really fortunate to have lived that kind of dream. I think I'm extra fortunate to be a commanding officer in charge of recruiting when Top Gun 2 comes out.
Yeah, that's right. This Christmas, finally. Right?
I think the Navy is going to see the same bow wave or same increase in interest after that movie, because it's an incredible privilege to serve, and I'm damn proud to do it.
Well, let's hope Tom does a good job for the Navy again. But did you play on that volleyball course or go to the bar and sing?
I've been to Kansas City barbecue. I don't think the volleyball courts are still there, and I don't have my dog tags on here, but you won't find me saying anything disparaging about that. It's been so influential in my life that
there you go.
I'm proud to live that legacy.
You mentioned something kind of coming out of that grid and surrounding yourself with good people. Let's talk about teamwork for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine needing to have any more trust in my teammate than flying 400 miles an hour by somebody or next to somebody 4 inches apart. Like,
how close do you guys really get up there? I mean, it looks like you're really close.
It is close, and it requires a ton of concentration for a sustained amount of time. And we're not inches apart the entire show, but nominally we're about 18 inches wingtip to canopy or wingtip to wingtip separation. Wow. But there's one maneuver that the 4 diamond pilots of the 6, you've got 4 pilots that fly into diamond that illustrate the precision capabilities of naval aviation. Then you've got the solos that demonstrate some high performance stuff. And so the 4 of us, you start out further apart, and through training, you work it in and develop that trust. And you know what the other pilot's going to do. You know how the jets are going to react. And so you're able to work it in, and you get closer and closer. And in one maneuver, we call it the Diamond 360. It's basically a descending 360-degree turn in front of the crowd. And, you'll get inside of, 6 inches there pretty regularly towards the end. You get better and you develop more trust. And it's also, I think, it's a great way that we use to challenge ourselves as the season goes on, so we don't get complacent. Because once you master a skill, that's another thing that naval aviation does really well. As soon as you master a skill, you move on to the next skill and build upon that foundation. And we take that mindset with the Blues as well. And you start out 6 feet apart, and as soon as you get comfortable there, then you've got to move it in to keep your senses and your skills very sharp.
Wow. I mean, to get that close, I mean, forget 6 inches.
There's
18 inches
there's
regularly.
A whole bunch of videos out there that I think people will enjoy to see how close that we hold it in those maneuvers. And there's still some movements in it together. And so the neat part is when you hit a bump or some turbulence, you kind of ride that pocket of air together and bounce and react together, and don't overreact, just react as a group. And that's that level of trust that has become a hallmark of that team.
It was another great lesson.
You guys are spending a lot of training time together,
sure,
and that's where a lot of that trust comes from, that training time. What are you guys, like, as a group, doing outside of that work time? Are you guys fostering those
Bob,
relationships?
They're doing the
those
fall
bonds?
where the guy catches the other guy, right?
I don't
Isn't that how you build trust?
think we did any trust falls. But no, we spend most of our winter, the Blue Angels spend most of their winter in El Centro, California, which is about an hour and a half east of San Diego. And you go out there, January 2nd or 3rd, and you spend January to mid-March flying 2 or 3 times a day, 6 days a week. And I love the phrase repetitio est mater studiorum, which is Latin for repetition is the mother of study. And we just do those flights a lot and develop a lot of trust that people are going to show up to work ready to go, enthusiastic, with a mindset that we say at the end of every official interaction with our team members. We say, "I'm glad to be here, boss." And we take that mindset that we are excited to be there, wearing that uniform, carrying on that legacy, and we're here to do the training and do the work and trust in each other. That we have a mindset that is humble and hungry to get better every flight, because we're on the clock. If you think about it, like I mentioned, it's 6 pilots, 3 new pilots, and 3 pilots that have done it before. When the one season ends in early November, you're on the clock to have a show ready by mid-March, because that's when the season starts. And there's no wiggle room there. So there's some time crunch in there to get the team ready and it requires an all-in trust. So going out to the desert in El Centro is kind of that crucible moment that bonds us together and allows us to have the trust in each other that's required to do the job well.
How does you can't every single day have it in you to show up enthusiastic, focused, dialed in, passionate.
You bet. There's plenty of times when you don't have that, and we ironically had the admiral that was in charge of naval aviation come visit us one time, and he had his aide, who was a friend of mine named Ben Coleman, make an application to the Blue Angels for the admiral, and he threw it on the desk like, I want to be on the team. And but he was not obtuse. He basically said, hey, I know, guys, that there are plenty of days when you probably don't want to put your boot up on that ladder and go to work and fly an air show, but you got to do it. And that was the first time I'd really ever heard that acknowledged, because it's not something that we even talked about internally about not wanting to do the job. But he at least acknowledged from the admiral perspective to say, hey, you probably don't want to put your boot up on the ladder every day, but you've got to, because it is a perishable skill that you've got to keep sharp. So there are days, but we try and pick each other up, and we even would do that on the radio. So the show is a sort of a scripted performance, and there's a bunch of radio calls that go on between all the pilots, and that mostly follows a script and follows the lead of the number one pilot, the boss, who describes every maneuver, and then we acknowledge it with our call sign or a radio call. And you could do that in a glum or downtrodden voice. And if you hear somebody do that, the next guy will typically try and answer with a little more enthusiasm, or to say, like, a way to lift everybody's spirits and say, hey, that might not have been our best maneuver, but we've got to be on to the next one, and we've got to be all in on it. And so that is a way that we would try and do that. And the other thing that we did to hold each other accountable for our attitude is we had a fine system. And so every day we would debrief how the day and how the flight went. And at the end of that, you would take a fine for any team violations, uniform violations, or sort of procedural error. But we'd also throw in there, I'll take a fine for my attitude. It wasn't good when I walked in the door today, and at least acknowledge that to everybody to hold each other accountable. And you're right, it's not always easy. Any job can, anything you love can still become a job if you do it every day. And there were days that it happened, but they were few and far between because you had so many people counting on you and able to lift you up.
I love that, like, self-fining.
I'm just
I'm
sitting here
find myself.
writing notes.
I walked in here today and I wasn't who I should have been. Like, I love that.
Bob, that would be daily. All right. So look, I'm sitting here writing notes of all the lessons, and I mean, I knew we would get some lessons. I knew we were going to get some great information from you there, John. And I mean, repetition and the power of repetition to make sure we're getting things right? One of the ones I love that you said was that we don't overreact, right? Because that's going to cause just as many problems as not reacting. That your mindset was in the right place, and that you guys would say certain things to put yourself in the right mindset. Expectations. I mean, clear expectations. It didn't matter how many times you guys have done the show. How many shows do you do a year?
I think we'll advertise that you do about 70 to 75 shows a year.
Well, then you don't need to be making those calls by the show 74th show, but you're still doing it.
You really do.
And setting the expectations.
The calls are almost like a metronome in a performance, and that's really helpful for us there. But you're right. I mean, it is repetitive, but those 75 shows are backed up by probably at least 2 or 3 times as many practice shows. I mean, every practice we do is the exact same thing as a show.
Yeah, you guys come in. I've watched the Blue Angels
I'm sure almost every one of our listeners hopefully has had the chance to see them.
Absolutely. Lake Washington. So you guys come into town, like, they're out there flying Thursday and
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday are like the actual shows, right? But 4 or 5 flights for every show, every 70 locations that you go to.
And then we also had accountability in there, and like you're saying, Bob, even self-finding when you come into a situation and say, hey, I'm going to take this on me. I'm going to take ownership of that and have accountability. So here's what I want to ask you. Even with all of these lessons you've shared, you're in a leadership position now.
Right.
Give me a leadership lesson that you are able to pass on to those who are beneath you, or the new recruits maybe that you get a chance to even meet with, that our audience wants to hear.
We had, I don't know that any recruiting commander would say, you know what environment I'd really like to recruit in is a global pandemic. But the nature of service kind of goes on. I mean, the requirements that the military is asked to meet don't stop with that. And so we had to continue on with our mission. And it had been a challenge because I think the nature of joining the military requires a sense of gravitas, and you don't want to do that online with an app. You want to do that face-to-face with a recruiter, and we're lucky to have them all over the place. But when I took over, we hadn't really kind of met our mission in quite a while, and we had kind of let the Navy down as far as the people that were joining from the Pacific Northwest. And I really wanted to focus on winning. I was really fortunate to kind of come in and bring on a new chief recruiter, and this guy, Walt Eisenman, is my chief recruiter, and he came in with a solid plan. And he came to me with a plan to make some adjustments. And they weren't always exactly what I had in mind as the commanding officer. But he said to me, hey, I promise I won't let you down. And this is a solution that I think we can agree on for about 80% of it. How about you let me own the 80%, and I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to execute this, and I'm not going to let you down, instead of trying to get it to the 100% solution that you might want as a CO, because I'm going to fight harder for my plan than I will trying to run your plan. And so I recognized that he was a motivated and talented individual, and I let him run his plan. And that's been really successful to put that trust in him and to see him energize and turn around our team. So surrounding yourself with really good people that you believe in and care about is as key to any leadership position as possible. And being able to come in with a new team and kind of energize our area here in the Pacific Northwest, from Montana, Idaho, Washington, Alaska, to energize this large organization has been powerful. So believing in your team, I think, is a great lesson that I've learned as a leader that I didn't anticipate when I took this job.
I think that, like, in my head, I'm like, what are the goals of a Navy, the head of Navy recruiting in the Pacific Northwest? Is it like numbers? Like, how many recruits are we going to bring in the door? Like,
it is numbers, like? and you want to hit that, but it's not. You understand where that's coming from, because the Navy, as an example, one of our key missions in Navy recruiting is recruiting nuclear technicians, sailors that can work on submarines and aircraft carriers and a nuclear power plant. The Navy's kind of got that market cornered, right? I mean, there aren't many other industries that are operating as many reactors as the Navy are. And so we can't let the country down. That's such a critical mission. And so our job isn't to just go out and meet the numbers. It's to go out and educate people that need to understand how important the role of a Navy aircraft carrier is when it goes over the horizon to support disaster relief in Haiti or to fly missions over Afghanistan and overwatch there. I mean, I've got friends that are flying missions there now. So I think that education piece is the real goal that we have, is just to get in front of as many people as we can and to talk about the Navy's opportunities. The numbers will follow, and that's kind of what I've tried to instill in our team. It's not, yes, I want to be able to meet the goals that the Navy has asked us to meet as far as new accessions that are joining, but I think it's more important to understand and educate the community about how much it is needed to have good people sign up and serve their country.
And there's so many different opportunities, as
Absolutely.
you're saying, from public relations to being a pilot to everything in between, all of that stuff. And it's the education that comes with it.
It really is. And so that's a huge piece of it. And I think Navy.com does a pretty solid job of giving a one-stop shop for people. So if people are listening and are interested in that at all, Navy.com is a great place to start to learn about those opportunities. I know that not everybody is made to serve their country in the military. And that was the fun part about being on the Blue Angels, is that we try to set a nature, and we actually changed the mission statement of the Blue Angels to talk about creating a culture of excellence and service to country. And that can be in a variety of different ways. It's easy to serve your country in other ways than just the Navy or the military.
So I'm hoping that right now, listening to the podcast, I'd love to say a 7 or 8 year old, but really I'd love to say like a 15, 16-year-old that's listening in the car with mom or dad saying, damn, this guy's pretty amazing. I mean, if you could be in this room, you'd feel the energy coming off the commander here, right? And that you're saying, hey, I'm interested, and going to Navy.com to be able to learn more and go to a recruiting station near you.
I think so. And really what I want to create is an environment where when a kid says that to a teacher, counselor, coach, or parent, that they are met with at least a welcome level of inquisitiveness. Like, hey, let's learn more about this together and see if it's right for you. Because I know it's not right for everybody, but let's learn about it together. And it's not met with any hostility or a no, like how I'm not going to let you do that. It should be met with a healthy dose of inquisitiveness to understand the nature of service. So yeah, I mean, that's, and we, to be fair though, we also recruit on all levels. We're charged with finding doctors and nurses and lawyers to serve at the reserve level.
So we'll take the grown-ups too.
So yeah, I mean, I need some good public affairs officers. So Chad and Bob, I'm going to sign you up after this.
All right, perfect. We'll talk about.
I brought a clipboard in here. What is that? Like,
I don't know that that'll go over well. My wife was Army, so if I went home and said, "Honey,
blue versus green.
I just joined up with Navy," there might be some issues. Now, here's what I can see from across the room. John is sitting in your
flight suit,
flight suit, right?
Which, by the way, I'm super excited about, Chad. When you had originally told me he was going to be coming from like an official event, I thought
he might be in full uniform.
Yeah, in like
right?
the dress blues or whatever, right? You're like, but I was like, Chad, I hope he wears the flight outfit, and he's got it on. Like,
okay, now here's what I'm noticing about the flight outfit. I don't need glasses to see across the room. I need glasses to maybe read what's in front of me as I get older. I see your name under your wings, and then under that, it looks like it says Johnny Kittens, or is it?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. It turns out not everybody gets Maverick and Iceman.
Okay.
So
now you're not allowed to pick your own call sign, right? Because I've given
you don't.
Bob the call sign Lids. Because Bob's got too many hats.
Okay.
Always talking about
it.
So Lids is Bob's call sign. I don't have anybody else yet figured out.
Yeah.
But I got Lids. Oh, we have the unicorn hunter. Boy, why did I? Now she's gonna yell at me because her name just went out of my head that I'm gonna blank on that. Right? How do you get that call sign? We got to hear the story behind it.
I mean, every new guy that shows up to the squadron is kind of a blank slate. They don't have really a call sign yet. They usually just get called FNG, and you can figure out what the new guy stands for. And and you want to prove yourself to these more established and more accomplished pilots that you're serving with. And they're usually waiting for you to screw up. Some guys have a physical attribute. For example, my call sign in flight school was Stilts because my last name is Hiltz and I'm pretty tall. But that certainly wasn't going to stick because that's too easy. And so I went through a few of them, and I think people get a kick out of this. F-18s in the Navy and Navy jets in general, when they refuel, they have to pop a probe out of the side of the jet and fly that into a refueling basket to get gas in flight. And we had to do these longer missions where you had to refuel several times.
You're hooking up to another plane, right?
Yep, you're hooking up to a tanker plane that puts out a hose and a basket that you got to.
You've seen it in the movie Air Force One. Then it causes the explosion, though, right? Okay.
Similar to that, yeah. And so I struggled with that, and so initially they were like, "We're going to call you Texicant because you're not refueling very well." And so I screwed that up. And but I tended to be pretty enthusiastic about the job that we were doing, and I left my email open on the aircraft carrier. We had to share computers, and some of the older guys jumped on there and said, "Hey guys, it's me. I'm the new pilot, and I just want to tell you how excited I am to be the newest pilot in the squadron. You guys are the best in the area, the best on the ground. You're the coolest people to hang out with. You're the most handsome, the most athletic. Every morning when I wake up, I feel like a little baby kitten when I come to work, and I want to bat you around with my paws and chase you around the room." This email went on for a couple pages, just scrolling through it. And I get back from a flight, and I check my email, and I see an email from myself like, "Hey, who did this? Who said, someone has my password?" And they're like, I don't know. That sounds like the way you talk normally, John. That's pretty much you. You're pretty much Johnny Kittens, and that stuck. So you can try and resist these things, but when you get a call sign, you get a call sign. And so I've been Johnny Kittens or JK for the rest of my career.
So we got Johnny Kittens, we got the Lids, and it was Holly, of course. Forgive me, Holly,
unicorn
for
hunter,
yes,
right.
our unicorn hunter. Would be her call sign. I'll work on one for you, Dave. The strong silent type in the back that we have over there. Okay, so we have amazing lessons coming from you here on Win Make Give. Before I wrap this up and we get near the end and all of this, before we wrap this up, one of the things we're doing this season on Win Make Give is we're giving. So
Right.
we want to give to a
Awesome.
charity on behalf of your selection, on behalf of you taking the time and coming and joining us today. So what charity are we going to be making a donation to, John?
I think the one that makes the most sense to me is the Blue Angels Foundation, blueangelsfoundation.org. And they're a group of former Blue Angels and associates that has done some strong work treating veterans with PTSD and aligning them with services in order to make that a easier transition for the guys that most naval aviators have supported on the ground. I mean, naval aviation by its nature over the last 20 years has been air-to-ground oriented and supporting our troops on the ground. And so we want to support those guys that have been in harm's way for quite a while. So the blueangelsfoundation.org does a great job in that. And so I think I would be honored, I know they would be honored to connect the two dots here and make that. So I love the premise of Win, Make, Give, and I thank you for the support of Blue Angels Foundation.
Well, it's our pleasure, and we thank you for being here. We thank our audience. Before we wrap this up, folks, we hope you'll be in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/WinMakeGive. John will hopefully come join us there in the group and maybe be able to answer some questions that you have.
I definitely will. And earlier this week, I was listening to your podcast with Jordan Harbinger and the power of networking. So I would be honored to be in your guys' network and to understand the power of Win, Make, Give and be able to further this relationship.
That's awesome. And what we'll do is when we drop this episode and it goes live, folks, I'm going to tag John in that post so that if you have any questions specifically you want to ask John, come on in and find out.
Or if you want to know
more.
What kind of opportunities are available for you in the Navy.
There you go.
Like, seriously, you guys have? You need a podcast person?
Absolutely.
Hey, I'll serve if I can sit here and do this all day long. I can do it in uniform. All right. But what we want to also remind you folks is it's because of our Win, Make, Give Facebook group that we're giving you this episode. It was because we asked in the group who had interesting connections, and John Hurlbert, thank you again, John, made the connection to the Blue Angels for us, so we were able to have this opportunity with you here today. So we really hope you're all joining us there, and if you know somebody really awesome, if you have a connection, we hope you'll reach out to Bob or myself and connect us so that we can make an interview happen to bring you value. Before we let you out of here, you've shared a ton of stuff. And I don't care if you even repeat something you said. What's the one message you want everybody out there to hear from you today other than join the Navy?
Right. That's certainly a good way to start. Serving in the Navy is what led me here. I think it's the power of expectations. And I'll tell a quick vignette about that. The day you show up as a member of the Blue Angels, your office, the pilot's office, is at one end of the hallway in the hangar. And it's a long, skinny hallway. And that hallway is lined with pictures of every team that's ever served on the Blue Angels from 1946 until present day, and this is the 75th anniversary. So all of those pilots, their eyes are looking at you as you walk that hallway from your office to the briefing room where you're going to brief that flight. And they're just calling out to you, expecting you to live up to the legacy that they've set. And if you have those expectations of yourself and of your team, it's really going to raise your level of performance. And so I think the power of expectations for yourself, for your teammates, for your family members is really critical. And I think that's a great lesson that anybody can learn. And I remember that feeling as you walk down that hallway. I did it a whole bunch of times, and it's something that sticks with me. And expectations
probably never changed. I bet it was as powerful the last time you walked down that hall.
It was more
as
powerful the last time. You know, knowing that that flight in November of 2014 would be the last time that I would wear that Blue Angel uniform and fly those jets in front of 100,000 people that day or so. It was more impactful knowing that at the end of it, I would just be another set of those eyes looking at the next person that was going to carry on that legacy.
Yeah.
That I was lucky to be a placeholder or a bridge for that legacy from Jim Tomaseski, who I took over for as the number 2 pilot, to Matt Siderhout, who I passed that legacy off onto. So the expectations of living up to that, that transcends the Blue Angels, that transcends naval service. Expecting stuff of yourself, of your team, and of others is a great way to raise your performance.
Wow. All right. On behalf of Ben Kinney, on behalf of Bob, Dave, and myself, John, we want to thank you, Commander Hiltz, for your service to our country.
Thank you. Proud to serve.
And anybody in our audience, of course, who's listening to this episode who has served our country, we want to thank you for your service. And as always, we hope you will follow in the footsteps of Commander Hiltz and get out there and remember, do good.